Hello, everyone, and welcome to Beyond the Blocks, a new live stream show by myself and Art Blocks that's going to be covering the digital art landscape and everything. We're gonna go into everything. It's gonna be an art heavy show. We're gonna be diving into art. We're gonna have great artists, um, platform entrepreneurs, people doing things in the Web3 space, but also beyond that. We're trying to keep it generic digital art and also make sure this is a fun show and engaging. Appreciate the patience a little bit. X was down, as I think everyone saw. Beauty of doing this live. This isn't recorded. We are not. This isn't happened a week ago, and we're putting it up now. This is live. So there's some danger to that. Some hiccups may happen. People may drop. They may rejoin. But the reason why we want to do it live is, one, so we can just react in the moment to things that happen. Two, that we can get feedback from you. So feel free to talk in the chat, things like that. As we're going, we'll try to have a spot at the end for questions that we can ask the panel. And everything like that is great. So thanks for joining the first episode. We're super excited. I want to just our first episode is on generative physicals, or using generative art to make things in the world, whether that's products, art, stained glass windows, and one of our guests, all those things. So thanks for joining. We're happy you're here, and let's kick this off. I'm going to bring in the rest of the crew here. Hello, everyone. How are you guys doing? Awesome. Yeah, so we have quite the crew here today. So we have Snowfro, who I'm sure everyone knows from here, from Art Blocks and Generative Goods, the creator of the Chromie Squiggle. We have Isma from Tram, Paris, which is a studio that has taken this concept of craftsmanship, of these really high quality, high intricate crafts, and actually have started to work with artists to use generative art to create these amazing designs and systems, and like I said, stained glass windows, in the technique of actually how to make a real stained glass window, not something that is 3D printed or anything like that, which is pretty amazing. And Luke Shannon, who I've talked to before on some of my shows, who's always a great person and also a great artist who has done many things in the material realm, probably early before anybody else really that I knew of. When you work with Gucci to do some of those textiles, and you've also done your chairs project, which is hello, everyone, and welcome to Beyond the Blocks, a new live stream show by myself and Art Blocks. And it's going to be covering the digital art landscape and everything. 1 second. We're gonna go into everything. It's gonna be an art heavy show. Sorry about that. We are this is live, first time around, so trying to get the process down, and I was all of a sudden just I hear my voice because I had the stream open and there's a delay, and I'm like, wait a second, I cannot keep talking with hearing my voice in my ear. That's going to be impossible. So I need to stop and to do that. So apologies for that. Let's continue the show. Let's kick it off. I want to talk about the first topic that I really want to talk about is why physicals. And the reason why I want to talk about this is because it seems we spent a lot of time talking about NFTs and digital art and these type of things, and we explored kind of on screens in this digital. Why is the digital only realm of things not good enough? Like why go into the physical realm, period, with art or with generative art, etc.? Open this to the floor of anybody who wants to take it.
I mean, I have a million opinions here. I just don't want to hog this thing. Like,
I'll call on people if you don't answer. So
please. First of all, I think purely digital is perfectly good enough. for a lot of things. And I think, I think of Jeff Davis's work, for example, I don't necessarily want to see printed, and he will probably die on that hill that color studies are not meant to be printed unless maybe they're being documented in a book. To me, digitally instructed physicals are really interesting in that, the provenance and the excitement around the generative medium can provide instructions for creating something physical. And I think that's something very special. And I also think that we spend, believe it or not, still a significant portion of our lives in the physical realm. And while over COVID, I think we spent a lot of time digitally, and that was really the only place to spend time other than with our immediate family or whoever our closest friends were. I think people go through cycles, and I've gone through cycles where it's like all physical, all digital, all physical, all digital. But the thing that remains and persists is that I like to walk by things in my house that make me smile, and the physical things make me smile, and the things I wear make me smile, and little dopamine hits here and there don't have to just happen on Twitter. They can also happen in real life.
Definitely.
I agree 100%. I think digital only is perfectly good. It's fine. It's the purest form, I think, when it comes to generative art, and that's amazing. I would add that to me, enlarging and expanding to the physical world and creating these bridges between digital and physical is truly going to explore the true potential of generative art, generative design, systems design, and so on. And that's why I think there is a beautiful, there is an unexplored territory, and we're all experimenting here. Lucian has done some amazing work in Marfa in his residency, and afterwards with some brands. We also try to work with some crafts and so on. So I think, and our blocks also we saw in Marfa last year. For me, like in order to explore the true potential of generative arts and generative technology is really explore the physical, and they're not opposed. They're complementary, and there is a need to build bridges across both worlds.
What do you think, Luke?
I would just say, yeah, I think that's exactly right. Like, I'm most interested in the translation between the two. You can go both directions. And I think in my practice, like, I really like making things, and code is a fundamental way to make things now. If you can code, you can do a whole bunch. A whole bunch of these machines speak code on some level. So it's really satisfying to, be able to see something expressed in a dozen different ways and a dozen different media. But neither the digital nor the physical should be, I think in my mind, especially privileged. Like, physical isn't realer than digital not realer than a physical.
And also too, you think about it, like, even like as soon as you make even if you make a digital art physical, right now it's really like two different pieces, right? Like, even though they may look similar, they're not the same, right? They're displayed on two different, even if they're displayed on a digital screen versus printed out, that it immediately changes the piece, and could have a different character to it, etc. So there's something to that translation of what you said, Luke, that's really interesting, right? Between that.
I think that's exactly what kind of translation is. Something's always lost and gained in that process. And
yeah, digitization is kind of a way to do things, but that's where you lose the process, right? But like, everybody on this call has spent time on this concept of instruction-based physicals, where the instructions, yes, what you see on the screen isn't maybe factual, but like when you look at an embroidered piece, if you're speaking the embroidered machine language, you're actually getting the exact stitch perfect output. The tapestries you guys did with Alexi, for example, like, you spoke the language of the machine. So yeah, the digital is beautiful to look at and wonderful to have in a collection and on your screen, but like, you're actually creating the truest form of that physical with plotters, which Plottables, I think, did a really incredible job of introducing the world, or at least our nerdy little world, to that. So you're not losing fidelity, and I will say that that's not the case across all physicals. I'd say the vast majority of physicals that represent digital objects absolutely are using the fidelity of the original. And I remember, especially being on the call with these other two guys, literally, like, they are making things where you don't lose the fidelity. but it's literally the translation. There's maybe even to take it further, it's not even translating. It's actually just speaking the language of a machine.
Yeah.
Native.
Exactly. And I would add, there is no translation when you actually write code that is meant to be physical. So effectively, when I work with Jeff for the stained glass sculpture, his code is actually written to be a stained glass piece. So he's expressing creatively himself in both digital and physical words day one. And that's very important. We're not tokenizing the physical thing, which I think is we're not actually seeing something digital and trying to make a physical out of it. No, there is a creative vision that is expressing itself both digitally and physically day one at once. And I think this is the future. Artists, designers, and brands will express themselves in both words day one through this instruction-based and through code and generative art and design and so on. And I'm very, very excited about this future. And I think, generative technology is going to solve a lot of problems that we see today and people have no idea.
Yeah, and it's like, it's something that, Eric, when you created art blocks, and you saw this idea of having code on chain that then is able to, through a hash that gets passed in, to generate all these different kind of outputs, unique outputs. It's what's interesting to me about this is that what that code on the chain ended up representing is almost an instruction set, right? And it's a pattern, right? And just like how a suit maker may make a pattern for a particular suit and then use that pattern to then execute these suits from that pattern. It's interesting how I think when you first made art blocks, you were only probably envisioning the digital realm of that, but now we're seeing with physicals, you can extend that beyond the digital into other mediums, right? But it's still that same instruction set and saved on the blockchain for that archival, quality to it, right?
The physical space instructed a lot of what our blocks is, though, and that's how it was. In the tile business, we were making tile collections that were also an algorithm that helped assemble tile collections so that people could understand what options they had instead of what they were focused on. And so, yeah, no, I think coming from manufacturing and coming from design, our blocks was this unlock to let generative creators automate, and the cheapest, lowest hanging fruit is pixels on a screen. Absolutely, the screen does not care if you change the color of the pixels or if you keep the color of the pixels. And so it is the freest form of expressing individual outputs that I can think of in the world. And then print, I guess, is next, but it's not always true to the digital. And then thinking through things like embroidery, for example, is a really good example of where you can not have to retool a machine and create unique outputs every single time. And you can't do that with screen printing, so there's limited. There's some things that are perfectly. The last thing I thought in my life was that I'd be so focused on embroidery. I spent the last however long, literally just knee deep in every little element of embroidery, and it's not just because I love embroidery. It's because it to me feels like the truest expression of automation without retooling between outputs, which is what a screen is. You don't have to retool the screen between outputs, and you can do the same with an embroidery machine.
And that's the revolution that is actually the generative technology brings to manufacturing, is to be able to produce in series unique pieces. Yeah. And this one of X applies to physicals. It's amazing. Today, if you look at for example, the design world, if somebody specs a rug for your home that is specific to your home, unique to you, your space, who you are, etc., you're happy to wait months and months before being delivered. And imagine what this is going to enable for merch, for consumer goods in general, when you'll be able to wait for your shirt to be made for you. So, and that's, I think, the on-demand thing, the generative technology will enable this on-demand production, which will have massive implications on brands in terms of cash flow management, inventory management, returns, and all of this. So that's why I think physicals, we just, we scratch the surface of what generative technology can bring to the world. And I'm very, very excited to to build this future. Luke as well has done some 3D printed ceramics instruction base that are amazing. You know, physicals really, I think, is going to help us realize, even within our community, how powerful is this generative technology and the one of X motto.
I like the one of X too, because it makes explicit, I think, the connection to one of X, like traditional printmaking, which is, you know, a matrix makes many prints, and a printmaker will tell you every single one is different, and they are. But one of X is kind of on a different level. But the thing that's really inspiring to me about printmaking is it's so much about distribution and dissemination of ideas and information, and often it's like a, you know, spreading subversive or, you know, somehow educational ideas. And I think being able to do that with algorithms, we're able to kind of take control of some of the algorithms that are pervasive and kind of controlling things in the world now. And so yeah, that's kind of what another one of my projects, Seating Arrangements, was about, is like the analog to printmaking. But I think thinking of the one of X objects as similar to prints, things that are disseminating information or a worldview, is really, I don't think we've fully seen what that can be.
Yeah, it's gonna be amazing. And like, I just don't know, like, I guess I want to talk about, like, why do not have that in the world today? Why am I buying, you know, like this shirt? It seems like a cool pattern shirt. I would like it to be like generative and have a unique version of this for sure, like 100%. I think if you asked anybody, like, they would. They don't want to be wearing the shirt that someone else is wearing down the street. Like, they would rather have, if given the same cost, which is what the whole generative art, you know, the generative manufacturing allows, is that, you know, we can do this with code and generate these unique outputs, but we don't have to have everyone designing each individual one, right? I'm curious of why doesn't this exist yet? Does anyone know about that?
I mean, demand is probably part of it. I think we just maybe, by luck of the draw, introduced generative to a bigger population than ever gave a shit about it. And then also, I think, you know, it's not just demand by you, the consumer, it's demand by the manufacturer. Like, have we, you know, I've heard me say this a couple of different times, but like, you know, when I started my tile business, if I wanted to order a custom tile, I had to order 50,000 square feet of that one print. And then 20 years later, we started getting into inkjet technology, and I could send a factory a folder of print, and they would send me a folder of tiles back. The price was still 10 times the price of a normal tile. It's been 5 years since I've explored that technology. It's likely that now it's only 5 times, and then it's 3 times, and then it's 2 times. And as it starts getting less expensive or more affordable, more and more designers can leverage that technology because it becomes more available to more and more people, not just to like the super elite that can afford a water jet or create custom collections. So part of it is this differentiation for manufacturers. They haven't really had like a really big push. If I say I want to create this collection and I'm gonna sell 2 million of them, but I need you to create a special injection molding system that, using, I don't know, hydraulics, changes the shape of the mold between every, like, I don't even think this is feasibly possible, but
Sounds cool.
has that ever even been requested? Right? We do it 3D printing now. We can actually get an SLS printer and we can 3D print a mold that can do 100 injection molded pieces per mold, as opposed to like 100,000 that you might get out of a stainless steel mold. 100 out of an SLS print is actually pretty insanely amazing because you get really good high quality prints. We now have demand, A, because more and more consumers have access to technology to be able to make things, and B, because we've kind of demonstrated that people absolutely are not just very emotionally attached to their unique individualized CryptoPunk PFP, but are willing to pay a tremendous amount of money to demonstrate their individuality. And, you know, I was on a Twitter Spaces last week or a couple of weeks ago, about CryptoPunks, and everyone was like, yeah, I bought a punk because it made me part of this community. And I'm like, that's really cool. But what actually makes this powerful is when everybody can participate. So yes, having a punk makes you part of a very elite community. You can also, for a lot less than a punk buy a Louis Vuitton purse that's unique to you that no one else has, because when someone hand makes something, the difference in manufacturing something that's unique to something that's the same is very insignificant. But what does it mean for like everyday consumers? And I don't see any reason why people that are so excited on the internet about having their unique opera or whatever, it would not then kind of end up in the hands of everyday people, like you said, where it's like, why can't I have a shirt where everything is the same, where every one of them is unique? We have not forced we have not forced them yet. We have not incentivized manufacturers to invest in tooling research that is not for higher capacity, but for lower capacity individualized production. And generally, the trade-off there is higher capacity, you sell it for less money. Lower capacity but individualized, you sell it for more money, but it should equal out to being the same. And then the drive is, this is how you distinguish yourself from your competitors. And I guess the last thing I'll say is when I was kind of like moving away from the tile business, I'd go to these trade shows and I'd just be so bored, like despondent with the like tile did not need to get any bigger. It didn't need to get any thinner. It would break if it was any thinner. Like there was a bunch of technology to make tile thinner, a bunch of technology to make tile bigger, but then it doesn't fit into a shipping container. The resolution of tile got so good over my 20 years in tile. It doesn't need to get any better. So what's the next logical step when it doesn't need to get bigger, thinner, or higher resolution? It's uniqueness, individuality. And so manufacturers will start to differentiate themselves with both the technology, and then what I really hope for like art blocks artists or generative artists in general is the IP from these people that put themselves out there in this craft, demonstrated that they are the leaders in their craft. Those are the people that I would hope the tile manufacturer that can make one of X tiles at no additional cost would reach out to Luke and would reach out to any of the artists that have been on our blogs. Go, okay, you understand this. You've established yourself as a real human, because we are entering an age of very fuzziness of who's human and how humans are making stuff, and say, I want you to help me create a tile collection that's unique and individualized.
How does this, I think, one thing that I think, I know Eric, I've done my dots project. Eric did Hearts and Craft. I think when you talk to kind of some people like in the community, it's always this debate of abundance versus scarcity, right? That I think plays into this as well. And I'm curious because like Isma, it sounds like you have, doing it seems you're focused on craft, right? Which to me would seem to be, at least to this point, kind of that scarcity mindset, right? Of really being
That's exactly what you just described.
Whereas, Eric has done, with generative goods, and just like, I know just from his past talking to him, he's very much in this abundance mindset of, no, let's use generative art and generate millions of outputs and like give everyone one, like, versus let's do a subset, having them be highly crafted. And, obviously there'd cost a lot of money because they are, very limited. So curious, take that. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, I don't think there is a right or wrong path. What I think is that we're approaching this from different angles, and we had these conversations all the time with Eric, which is good. So for me, I think we need to build storytelling. We need to build use cases that are easily understandable by people. And to me, craftsmanship is my background, design as well, etc., which I share with Eric. And to me, craftsmanship, if I tell anyone this is handcrafted, immediately they're open to a conversation. They are interested. And technology lacks a good brand. So for me, the way to build a good storytelling and continue this conversation between technology, abundance, scarcity, craftsmanship, and so on, is to do these generative craft concepts. And because we work with generational craftsmen, some of them back 6 centuries ago in some regions like Aubusson in France and so on, like we do these limited edition pieces and so on in order to reach a certain audience of KOLs, of designers, journalists, and so on. And we had amazing media. And obviously, we sell the pieces and so on, which is great. But the end game is what Eric's vision, and it's my vision as well. And that's actually what we bonded over that with Eric. First time we met was in Miami. We didn't talk about Squiggles, we didn't talk about. Arbot, we talked about the power of generative technology and engine, and that's how we really bonded. So for me, top down, bottom to top, like it's two ways that are totally both valid, and we need to build use cases, because your question prior to this one was, why don't we see more and more of this? And the reason why is that there are many use cases, and even if there are some use cases in some areas, there aren't a lot of people who can bridge both worlds, who can talk to a brand in the language of the brand, and who can talk to a generative artist, who I would just call an artist, in the language of the artist, or people who are actually understand our community and what's we're about, our raison d'être, and also understand what a brand is about, etc. So, and these people, we're going to see more and more of them, and those are going to be the enablers and people who are going to build these bridges, and we're going to see this. And you know how it works. It's a 7-year overnight success, and we're builders here, and all of a sudden, what I think, it's not a question of if, it's a question of when. I think all brands, it's going to be only like a drop, maybe 1,000 piece, each unique, done, to the next, produced on demand. And I would even push it further, and I would finish with this, is I believe in decentralized production, decentralized manufacturing. Is that with digital fabrication, with generative technology, your consumer is in the US, you will produce in the US and ship locally. So I think many years from now, it's going to be create globally, produce locally, and generative technology is going to play a big role in this.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting because there's so many avenues to this as well. I'm curious, Luke, your take on like what you like think of this. Like what comes to mind is like, that was very commercial, right? Like it's a very commercial outlook. And some people will say that, oh, well, that doesn't sound like art at all. Like it sounds like very commercial, right? And you're pumping out products, and that's like the opposite of art, right? I'm curious, Luke, as like an artist, what do you think about scale and scarcity versus, really abundance, or just like where everyone, there's so many different permutations of it, do you think that there's tension there? Do you, as an artist, do you feel that you would like to go like one way or the other on this? I know I'm putting you on the spot.
No, it's a good question. I think there's room for both. I think, some artworks are a kind of craft thing that, is very one of one, made that way. And some things are meant to be shared really widely. Like, I think it depends on just what that work is. Like one of my, I don't know, maybe this is impossible to see, but right here is one of my favorite works by a Brazilian artist, Ligia Clark. And it's called Caminandos, and it's made out of just a sheet of paper and some scissors, and anybody can like do it and make it and have that experience. And it's made that way intentionally so it can be disseminated. But then there's also wonderful works that just simply take that kind of time and scale and expertise. And I think a craft approach makes sense. And I think, textiles is take textiles, for example. It's a very old practice and focused on a kind of wide appeal. And I guess the advent of computational textiles, which I also want to mention, like that's also an old thing, and there's a lot of amazing pioneers, and especially women pioneers in computational textiles, and people today working in that, like Lucia, Craftwork Studio, Lovid, many more all come to mind. Like looms were kind of the first computers, and it's kind of twofold, because there is a desire to have individuality, but also people love a brand because it's something recognizable, something they can join a part of. And the CryptoPunks are a good example. Like there is a limitation to the variation that is very intentional, and being able to join something like that is, equally important. I don't know if that answers the question. I went to a lot of places, but
No, that's great. No, that's a perfect, you know, I think you summarized it well. Between that, from an artist perspective, I think is really important to just think about that, because it is like it brings to mind things like Andy Warhol. You know, he really floated that line between commercial things and doing different, you know, publications and stuff, but also with the fine art. And you know, I think there is this maybe false narrative that you have to pick one or the other. But I think there's been, history shows us that there's been artists that have been able to do both, right? And be
Yeah.
serious, you know, fine artists, but also pursue commercial things as well that are very mass market.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I think art should be about, you know, what's happening now. And the idea for art blocks that you could go to a browser and share your art that way, like that is where we live so much of our lives. Of course, that's where art should be made. And, you know, pop art, like commercialization, it's about what's happening now. And I think algorithms are one of the biggest things happening right now, and making work through that in the browser with this variation, following instruction sets and making instantiations. That's just fundamental to now.
Great. Yeah, so I think as we're heading up and getting towards the end of this episode, I'd like to just like go around and say what physical things are each of you working on right now that you're excited about, that you want to tell people about, that you want them to check out, etc. Let's start with you, Eric.
So I spent a lot of my time focused on generative goods, which is starting to finally refine a product. We started as a real, I think, kind of actually felt like a startup, unlike our blocks, which was, I think, the opposite of a normal startup experience. And so we started with big ideas, and we finally kind of refined to two physical things. One of them is how people can be onboarded into digital and generative without having to have a wallet. And that's a physical thing because that's how most people interact in the world. And two is just truly getting down to the bones of embroidery. And, you know, we wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for Luke's initial support of that for our blocks, which is something I'm pretty grateful for. Like we figured out very early on the opportunity to be able to write code directly, essentially to an embroidery machine, and where we started and where we are today, even though it might be the least glorious or glamorous thing to talk about because it's just like embroidery. To Luke's point, embroidery started with punch cards. It's been around for a really long time, and we're still using the exact same like technology with DST files. Being able to apply everything I've learned in my tile business, everything I've learned in art blocks, everything I've learned as an artist, wanting to get my work out there. Well, that's my goal as an artist, is for people to wear my stuff and to like walk around and share my work and talk about it. The embroidery side of it is something I'm really proud of, and I know it's just embroidery, but I'm just like super thrilled with what we're doing there, and that's all just physical, digitally instructed physical work from generative algorithms on the blockchain.
Awesome. How about you, Esma?
In our blocks open house in Marfa, we unveiled the prototypes of this collection, Desert Threads. That's we worked on with. We did this residency in Morocco with IX Shells, Linda Dunya, and Finger Code, and we introduced various crafts, and they picked tufting, so it's instruction based tufting. To make tapestries and rugs. So we showed the prototypes, and we've been very, very blessed with all the media coverage, from Wallpaper to ArtNet to some really important accounts on Instagram. So we're gonna release that collection. We're fine-tuning that, and then also we're working on the generative bistro chair with Maison Drucker. So if you're in Paris on Saint-Germain sitting at Café de Flore, you're sitting on a Maison Drucker chair. So the output, we did the first version, a V1 with Bright Moments in Paris and Arenda Lash. And then this V2 is really, allowing everyone who all restaurants, hospitality, residential, like to have a unique bistro furniture, you know. So that's something we're working on with the our blocks engine, our partners who are doing some amazing work, and I'm very, very excited to show you what we're working on next. So these two projects are taking also our time.
And where can people check that out at?
our website, www.trame.com. Thank you for this question. Or our Twitter, or just type Tram Paris, search, and you'll find all the media and all the press. So yes, or ask me directly on Twitter. I'm really happy to answer your questions and share with you everything we're working on.
It's great. Luke, what are you up to?
A couple of things. First, I would also just be remiss if I didn't shout out Stitchables and Matt Jacobson. Like, embroidery was my inspiration. And yeah, I'm working on a few sides of like 3 kind of projects, each a different side of this physical digital translation. Some are paintings from digital images. Another one is this plotter scanner sculpture that I've built and kind of teased a couple times. That's about the kind of transition, physical to digital. And then this third one I'm working on is going to be kind of a massive sculpture based around poetry. And I'm actually more using algorithms to output instructions that I will try to follow to make myself.
Awesome.
They're all kind of forthcoming, TBD.
Sweet.
That sounds awesome.
Beautiful.
Always love all of your works, and what you guys are working on is just always amazing. Always at the cutting edge and really thinking, what's next? Where can we go? The creativity in this group is really high. So again, I think it was a great conversation. I think a lot of people are going to get a lot out of it, enjoy it. And thank you all for coming on today. And on the first episode of this. So we'll be doing this again in 2 weeks. So this would be a bi-monthly thing every 2 weeks for around a half an hour. And we'll have a whole nother set of guests and a whole nother topic. But I want to thank Art Blocks, for their support of this, and for just running with it and doing it live. It's risky, things can go wrong, but that's the fun of it, right? So looking forward to continuing. If you have any feedback for the show, you want to see certain guests on, certain artists that you really are like, what's making them tick, like things like that. You want to see them on a live show where they can't like duck out and say, I don't want to answer that question. Post on Twitter, at me, whatever, and we can make it happen, because I think a lot of artists are excited to come on and chat for sure, and to have a platform like this to come and talk about their work. So we're looking forward to keeping this going, and to getting the information out there, and some great art and artists and platform entrepreneurs. NFTs are not dead, and also digital art is not dead as much as you would look in crypto Twitter. And we're here alive and well, and we're going to continue to push the envelope and push it forward, and to have fun while we're doing it. So thank you all for joining. Thank you for watching, and we will see you in a couple weeks. Ciao.